The white dress was pristine, the flowers perfect, and the bride was absolutely terrified. Christian Matthews noticed it first in her hands, the way they trembled as she gripped the bouquet so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. He was just there to fix a broken air conditioning unit in the church basement, another maintenance call at St. Matthew's that would hopefully wrap up before he needed to pick up his 7-year-old daughter Sophie from her friend's house. But something about the way Emma Sterling stood at the altar made him pause at the basement entrance, wrench still in hand. The groom, Tyler Blackstone, was everything a small town like Riverside, Oregon expected in a successful man. Expensive suit, confident smile, the kind of presence that commanded attention. He owned 3 businesses downtown and drove a car that cost more than Christian made in 2 years, working maintenance at Riverside General Hospital. But there was something in the way Tyler's hand gripped Emma's wrist during their vows, something possessive that made Christian's chest tighten with recognition. He'd seen that grip before, 5 years ago, when he was still working as an EMT. A domestic violence call that had ended with a woman named Rachel Blackstone refusing to press charges, insisting her husband would never hurt her again. Christian remembered her face, remembered the fear masked as love, remembered how she'd flinched when Tyler had arrived at the hospital to take her home. 6 months later, Rachel was dead, and Tyler was a widower collecting life insurance money with tears that never quite reached his eyes. Now Tyler was marrying again, and Emma looked exactly like Rachel had that night in the emergency room, trapped, scared, but convinced she had no choice. The wedding continued around them, guests smiling and taking pictures, completely oblivious to the silent drama unfolding at the altar. Christian should have minded his own business, should have finished the repair job, and gone home to Sophie. Instead, he found himself moving closer to the sanctuary, positioning himself near the side exit where he could see Emma's face clearly. When the pastor asked if anyone objected to the union, the silence stretched longer than it should have. Emma's eyes darted desperately around the packed church, landing briefly on Christian's concerned face. In that moment, he saw everything she couldn't say out loud. The purple bruise carefully concealed under makeup at her collarbone. The way she kept glancing toward the exits like a caged animal looking for escape. The resignation in her posture that spoke of someone who'd given up hope of rescue. Christian had spent 3 years rebuilding his life after his wife Maria died in a car accident, pouring everything into raising Sophie alone while working double shifts to keep them afloat in their small apartment at Mountain View Complex. He'd learned to keep his head down, mind his own business, focus on the simple goal of being there for his daughter every single day. Getting involved in other people's problems was a luxury he couldn't afford, especially when those problems involved Tyler Blackstone, a man with enough money and influence to destroy what little stability Christian had managed to create. But as Tyler slipped the ring onto Emma's finger with that same possessive grip Christian remembered from the hospital, he thought about Sophie asking him just that morning why some people hurt others when they're supposed to love them. She'd been reading a fairy tale about a princess trapped in a tower, and Christian had given her some gentle answer about how real life was more complicated than stories. Now, watching Emma's silent plea for help, he realized sometimes real life actually was that simple. Sometimes there really were people who needed rescuing, and sometimes you were the only one in position to help. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The reception was being held at Lakeside Manor, the most expensive venue in town, with a guest list that included everyone who mattered in Riverside's small business community. Christian knew he didn't belong there, but he also knew that once Emma left this church as Tyler's wife, her chances of escape would disappear entirely. Tyler wasn't just possessive, he was careful, methodical, the kind of man who planned every detail and eliminated every threat. Rachel had learned that lesson too late. Christian slipped out of the church as the ceremony concluded, his mind already working through possibilities. He had maybe 20 minutes before the wedding party arrived at the reception. 20 minutes to figure out how to help a woman he barely knew escape from a man who'd already killed once and gotten away with it. As he walked toward his old pickup truck, Christian pulled out his phone and made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to let Tyler Blackstone claim another victim, even if it meant risking everything he'd worked to protect. Christian's first call was to his neighbor Mrs. Chen, asking if Sophie could stay an extra hour at her playdate. The second call was harder. Detective Lisa Parker had been the investigating officer on Rachel Blackstone's case, and Christian had worked with her on several EMT calls over the years. She was one of the few people in Riverside who'd never quite believed Tyler's story about Rachel's accidental fall down the stairs. "Christian, what's going on?" Lisa's voice was cautious when she answered. She knew he wouldn't call unless it was serious. "Tyler Blackstone just got married," Christian said, watching the wedding party pose for photos outside St. Matthew's through his rearview mirror. "The bride looks exactly like Rachel did that night we brought her in. Same fear, same bruises hidden under makeup, same everything." There was a long pause. "You know I can't act on a hunch, Christian. We investigated Rachel's death thoroughly. No evidence of foul play. Because Tyler's smart. Because he has money. And lawyers. And knows how to make things look accidental." Christian gripped the steering wheel tighter. "But I'm telling you, Lisa, this woman is in danger. I saw her face during the ceremony. She's terrified of him. Even if that's true, being scared of your husband isn't illegal. She married him willingly, in front of 200 witnesses." Lisa's frustration was evident. "Unless she asks for help or he actually hurts her, my hands are tied." Christian ended the call, knowing he was on his own. The wedding party was loading into a convoy of luxury cars, headed for Lakeside Manor. Emma sat in the passenger seat of Tyler's black Mercedes, staring straight ahead while he spoke animatedly to someone on his phone. Even from a distance, Christian could see the rigid set of her shoulders, the way she seemed to shrink away from Tyler's presence. He followed the convoy at a careful distance, his mind racing through everything he knew about Tyler Blackstone. The man was a control freak who'd built his business empire through intimidation and careful manipulation. He owned Riverside's most popular restaurant, a construction company, and a small chain of fitness centers. People respected him, feared him, and none of them looked too closely at the accidents that seemed to happen to anyone who crossed him. Rachel hadn't been Tyler's first wife. There had been another woman, years before Christian moved to Riverside, who died in what the police called a hiking accident. A fall from Eagles Point, the scenic overlook that was popular with tourists and locals alike. Tyler had been devastated, or so everyone said. He'd collected the life insurance, grieved publicly, and eventually moved on to Rachel. Now Rachel was dead too, and Emma was wife number 3. The reception at Lakeside Manor was in full swing when Christian arrived. He parked in the employee lot behind the kitchen, grateful for the maintenance uniform that made him invisible to most people. The catering staff was too busy to question why a hospital maintenance worker was wandering around their venue, and Christian used that anonymity to slip inside and observe. The ballroom was elegant, all crystal chandeliers and white linens, filled with Riverside's elite, celebrating Tyler's happiness. The man himself was working the room like a politician, shaking hands and accepting congratulations while Emma sat at the head table, barely touching her dinner. She'd changed from her wedding dress into a pale blue reception gown that somehow made her look even more fragile. Every few minutes, Tyler would return to her side, his hand possessive on her shoulder as he whispered something in her ear that made her flinch. Christian positioned himself near the service entrance where he could watch without being noticed. The longer he observed, the more his certainty grew. This wasn't just a nervous bride or wedding day jitters. Emma was genuinely afraid, and Tyler was enjoying her fear. He'd catch her eye across the room and smile in a way that never reached his eyes, the same cold expression Christian remembered from the hospital that night with Rachel. During the father-daughter dance, Christian noticed Emma excuse herself to the restroom. Tyler started to follow, but was intercepted by a group of business associates wanting to discuss some deal. It was the first time all evening that Emma had been alone, and Christian knew this might be his only chance. The women's restroom was located down a hallway near the kitchen, away from the main reception area. Christian waited until he was sure no one was watching, then approached the hallway. He didn't go into the restroom, but positioned himself where Emma would see him when she came out. When she emerged a few minutes later, her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the fact that she'd been crying. "Ma'am," Christian said quietly, "are you okay?" Emma startled, looking around frantically as if Tyler might appear at any moment. "I'm fine," she said automatically. but her voice shook. "Just tired. It's been a long day. My name is Christian Matthews. I work maintenance at the hospital." He kept his voice gentle, non-threatening. "I knew your husband's first wife, Rachel. I was the EMT who brought her to the emergency room the night before she died." Emma's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "She had the same bruises you're hiding under your makeup, the same fear in her eyes that you have right now." Christian stepped slightly closer, still maintaining a respectful distance. "Rachel told me that night that Tyler would never hurt her again. 6 months later, she was dead." "You're wrong," Emma whispered. But her words lacked conviction. Tyler loved Rachel. He was devastated when she died. It was an accident. Tyler's good at making things look like accidents. Just like he's good at making women believe they don't have any other choice. Christian pulled out his phone, showing her a contact number. "This is Detective Lisa Parker. She investigated Rachel's death. If you call her right now, she'll help you. But once you leave here tonight, once Tyler gets you alone, it might be too late." Emma stared at the phone like it was a lifeline she was afraid to grab. "You don't understand!" "I can't just leave. Tyler will find me. He always finds people who try to cross him. And I have nowhere to go. No money, no family. My parents are dead, and I gave up my job when Tyler said wives shouldn't work." The desperation in her voice was heartbreaking, but it also confirmed everything Christian had suspected. Tyler had isolated Emma completely, just like he'd done with Rachel. No support system, no financial independence, no way out. It was a classic pattern that Christian had seen too many times during his EMT years. "There are shelters, safe houses, people who can help," Christian said urgently. "But you have to take the first step. You have to choose to save yourself." "Emma?" Tyler's voice echoed down the hallway, and both Christian and Emma froze. "Sweetheart, where are you?" "People are asking for the bride." Emma's terror was immediate and complete. She grabbed Christian's arm, her nails digging into his skin. "Please," she whispered. "Don't tell him we talked. Promise me you won't tell him." Before Christian could respond, Tyler appeared at the end of the hallway, his smile sharp and dangerous. "There you are, darling. I was worried." His eyes shifted to Christian, taking in the maintenance uniform with calculated assessment. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem, sir," Christian said evenly. "Just checking on a possible plumbing issue. Everything seems fine now." Tyler's smile never wavered, but his eyes remained cold. "Good. We wouldn't want anything to spoil such a perfect evening." He wrapped his arm around Emma's waist, pulling her close with unmistakable possessiveness. "Come along, sweetheart. It's time for our first dance as husband and wife." As Tyler led Emma away, she looked back at Christian with an expression that would haunt him for the rest of his life. It was the look of someone drowning who'd just watched their last hope of rescue disappear beneath the waves. Christian stood in that empty hallway, knowing he'd failed her, knowing that in a few hours Tyler would take his new wife home, and the real nightmare would begin. But Christian also knew he couldn't give up. Somewhere in this twisted situation, there had to be a way to save Emma before she became Tyler's next victim. He just had to find it before it was too late. Christian couldn't sleep that night. He'd picked up Sophie from Mrs. Chen's house, helped her with homework, made dinner, and gone through all the normal routines of single fatherhood. But his mind kept replaying Emma's terrified expression. By midnight, he was sitting at his small kitchen table with his laptop open, researching everything he could find about Tyler Blackstone's previous wives. The official records painted Tyler as a tragic figure. His first wife, Jennifer Walsh, had fallen to her death while hiking at Eagles Point in 2018. The newspaper articles described a devoted husband who'd organized search parties when she didn't return from her solo hike. Her body was found 3 days later at the bottom of a ravine. The investigation concluded it was an accidental fall, possibly caused by loose rocks on the trail. Tyler had been at his restaurant during the estimated time of death, with dozens of witnesses to confirm his alibi. Rachel's death in 2021 followed a similar pattern. Another accident, another airtight alibi for Tyler. She'd fallen down the stairs at their home while Tyler was at a business dinner with city council members. The medical examiner found evidence consistent with an accidental fall, though Christian remembered questioning some of the injuries when they'd brought her to the hospital that final time. But without concrete evidence, and with Tyler's influential friends vouching for his character, the case was closed quickly. What troubled Christian most was the timing. Both women had died within 18 months of marrying Tyler. Both had substantial life insurance policies that Tyler had encouraged them to take out. Both had been gradually isolated from friends and family in the months leading up to their deaths. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to look, but Tyler was careful enough to avoid leaving evidence that would hold up in court. Christian's research led him down rabbit holes of domestic violence statistics and patterns of abuse. He learned about something called the honeymoon period, where abusers could be charming and loving for months or even years before the violence escalated. He read about financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and the average of 7 attempts it took for victims to successfully leave their abusers. By 3 in the morning, he understood exactly why Emma felt trapped. The next day was Saturday, which meant Sophie had soccer practice at Riverside Community Center. Christian normally enjoyed these weekend mornings, watching his daughter play with the unbridled enthusiasm of a 7-year-old who believed the world was fundamentally good. But today he found himself scanning the parking lot and sidelines, looking for any sign of Emma or Tyler. Tyler's black Mercedes wasn't there, but Christian couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. After practice, Sophie wanted to stop by the playground behind the community center. She was playing on the swings when Christian noticed a familiar figure sitting alone on a bench near the walking trail. Emma was wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and a long-sleeved shirt despite the warm October weather. She was staring at the pond where a few ducks were swimming peacefully, completely motionless except for the slight trembling in her hands. Christian's heart sank as he approached her. Up close, he could see the edge of a bruise on her jaw that the sunglasses couldn't hide, and the way she favored her left arm suggested more injuries beneath the long sleeves. This was exactly what he'd feared would happen after the wedding. "Emma," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned toward him with a sharp intake of breath, then relaxed slightly when she recognized him. "You're the maintenance man from last night. Christian, right?" "That's right." He gestured towards Sophie, who was now climbing on the jungle gym. "That's my daughter Sophie. We come here most Saturdays." He sat down on the bench, maintaining some distance. "How are you feeling today?" Emma's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Like a new bride should feel, I suppose." She touched her jaw unconsciously. "Tyler was disappointed that I seemed so distant at the reception. He thought I should have been more grateful for such a beautiful wedding." The implications of her words made Christian's stomach turn, but he kept his voice calm. "Where is Tyler now?" "Golf with some business associates. He'll be gone for several hours." Emma pulled her sleeves down further, covering her wrists. "He likes his Saturday golf games. Says it's important for networking, building relationships with the right people in town." Christian recognized the opening he'd been hoping for. "Emma, you don't have to live like this. There are people who can help you get away safely." "You don't understand." Emma's voice was flat, defeated. "Tyler showed me something last night. Photos of Rachel right before she died. He said accidents happen to careless people, people who don't appreciate what they have." She turned to look at Christian directly, and he could see absolute terror behind the sunglasses. "He has friends everywhere. The police, the mayor's office, even the hospital where you work. He told me about Dr. Harrison, how Tyler helped fund the new cardiac wing. How grateful the hospital administration is for his generous donations." Dr. Harrison was Christian's supervisor's boss, a man who controlled hiring and firing decisions throughout the hospital. If Tyler had influence there, Christian's job could disappear with a phone call. More importantly, if Tyler had connections in law enforcement, any attempt to help Emma through official channels would be reported back to him immediately. "He's trying to scare you into submission," Christian said, though he suspected Tyler's threats weren't empty. "That's what abusers do. They make you believe there's no way out." "Isn't there?" Emma stood up abruptly, pacing to the edge of the pond. "I tried to leave once, 3 months ago, before the wedding. I had second thoughts about everything. About Tyler's jealousy, and his need to control every aspect of my life. So I packed a bag and drove to Portland, thinking I could start over there." Christian watched her carefully, seeing the way she wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to hold the pieces together. Tyler found me within 6 hours. I was staying at a cheap motel under my maiden name, paying cash, thinking I was being so clever. But he walked into that motel room like he'd known exactly where I was the whole time. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. He had photos of me checking in, photos of the license plate on my car, photos of me buying coffee at a gas station on the highway. He said he wanted to make sure I was safe, that he'd been worried sick when I disappeared without explanation. The level of surveillance Emma was describing went far beyond normal jealousy. Tyler had resources, connections, and the kind of obsessive control that made him genuinely dangerous. Christian began to understand why Emma felt hopeless. Tyler had demonstrated that running wasn't an option, that he could find her anywhere, anytime. He drove me back home that night, Emma continued, made me promise never to scare him like that again. Then he planned the most beautiful wedding, invited everyone who mattered in Riverside, made sure our marriage would be this public, celebrated thing that no one would question. She turned back to Christian. Don't you see? The wedding wasn't about love. It was Tyler's way of making sure I could never disappear again. Now I'm Mrs. Tyler Blackstone, and everyone in town knows it. Sophie called out from the playground, asking Christian to push her on the swings. The normal request from his daughter felt surreal against the backdrop of Emma's nightmare, but it also reminded him why he couldn't just walk away from this situation. Sophie lived in a world where daddies were protectors, where good people helped others, where justice existed. How could he explain to her someday that he'd known someone was in danger and done nothing? Emma, listen to me, Christian said urgently as Sophie ran toward them. Tyler may have connections, but he's not invincible. His pattern is to make deaths look accidental, which means he has to be careful, methodical. That gives us time to plan, to find a way to get you out safely. Us? Emma looked at him with surprise. Why would you risk getting involved? You have a daughter to think about. Christian looked at Sophie, who was chattering excitedly about her playground adventures, her face bright with innocence and joy. That's exactly why I have to get involved. Because I want her to grow up in a world where people help each other, where monsters like Tyler don't get to win. Emma stared at him for a long moment, and Christian could see her wrestling with hope and despair. Even if we could figure out a way, Tyler would know it was you who helped me. He'd destroy your life, probably get you fired, maybe worse. Let me worry about that, Christian said, though privately he knew she was right. The question is, are you willing to try one more time? Because I think I might know someone who can help us do this right. For the first time since he'd met her, Emma's expression showed something other than fear. It wasn't quite hope yet, but it was the possibility of hope, which was more than she'd had yesterday. Who? Christian pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in over a year. Marcus Webb had been his partner during his EMT days, before Marcus left to become a private investigator specializing in domestic violence cases. Marcus had resources that went beyond local law enforcement, connections in places Tyler couldn't reach, and most importantly, experience in getting women away from dangerous men. His name is Marcus Webb. He's helped women escape situations like yours before, women whose husbands had money and influence and dangerous friends. Christian showed her the contact information. But Emma, if we do this, we have to do it right the first time. Because if Tyler catches us, there won't be a second chance. Emma took the phone with shaking hands, staring at Marcus's number like it was either salvation or damnation. Around them, families enjoyed their peaceful Saturday afternoon at the park, completely unaware that they were witnessing a moment that would determine whether Emma lived or became Tyler's next victim. What would I have to do? She asked finally. Christian felt a surge of determination mixed with terror. He was about to commit himself, and possibly his daughter, to a course of action that could destroy everything they'd built in Riverside. But looking at Emma's battered face, thinking about Rachel and Jennifer and the women who might come after Emma if Tyler wasn't stopped, he knew there was really no choice at all. Leave that to me, he said. But Emma, once we start this, there's no going back. Are you ready to fight for your life? Everything unraveled on Tuesday morning. Christian was replacing filters in the hospital's HVAC system when his supervisor, Jim Rodriguez, found him in the mechanical room looking grim. Matthews, we need to talk. My office now. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Christian's mind raced through possibilities, but deep down he knew what this was about. Tyler Blackstone had made good on his implied threats, and Christian's attempt to help Emma was about to cost him everything. Jim closed the office door and sat heavily behind his desk. "I've been ordered to place you on administrative leave, pending an investigation into theft of hospital property and inappropriate conduct with patients, families." The accusations were vague enough to be impossible to disprove quickly, specific enough to justify immediate suspension. Christian felt a cold rage building in his chest. "This is about Tyler Blackstone, isn't it?" "I can't discuss the details of an ongoing investigation," Jim said, but his expression was apologetic. "Christian, off the record, I've worked with you for 3 years. You're one of the most honest people I know. But Dr. Harrison got a call from someone very influential in this town, and when people at that level make complaints, we have to take them seriously." "So I'm guilty until proven innocent?" "You're suspended with pay until HR can complete their review. Could take weeks, maybe months." Jim leaned forward. "Look, whatever you're mixed up in, whatever you think you're trying to prove, it's not worth destroying your career over. This job supports your daughter. Don't forget that." Christian left the hospital knowing his time had run out. Tyler wasn't just isolating Emma anymore. He was systematically destroying anyone who might help her. The message was clear: back off or lose everything. But when Christian got home to his apartment, he found something that changed everything. Sophie was at school, and the front door was slightly ajar. His blood turned to ice as he pushed it open, expecting to find his home ransacked, or worse. Instead, he found Emma sitting at his kitchen table, a duffel bag at her feet, and terror etched in every line of her face. "He knows," she said without preamble. "Tyler knows you've been talking to me. He knows about Saturday at the park, about everything." Christian quickly locked the door and checked the windows. "How did you get here?" "I told Tyler I was going grocery shopping. I have maybe 30 minutes before he expects me back." Emma's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking violently. "Christian, he showed me pictures this morning. Pictures of you at the hospital, pictures of Sophie at her school, pictures of your apartment building. He knows where you work, where you live, where your daughter goes to school." The implications hit Christian like a physical blow. Tyler wasn't just threatening him anymore. He was threatening Sophie. What exactly did he say? He said accidents happen to people who interfere in other people's marriages. He said children are especially vulnerable because they trust strangers so easily. Emma's voice broke. He described Sophie's daily routine: what time she walks to school, which route she takes, where she plays after school. "He knows everything about your life, Christian." Christian's parental instincts went into overdrive. He grabbed his phone to call Sophie's school, to warn them, to do something to protect his daughter. But Emma caught his wrist. "There's more," she said. "Tyler's planning something for this weekend. I heard him on the phone last night making arrangements for what he called a camping trip to Eagles Point, the same place his first wife died." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Tyler was going to kill Emma at Eagles Point and make it look like another hiking accident, just like he'd done with Jennifer Walsh 7 years ago. The remote location, the history of accidents there, the perfect cover story of a tragic newlywed adventure gone wrong. "We have to call the police," Christian said, though he knew it was futile. "With what evidence? Tyler's too smart to leave proof of his plans lying around. And even if they believed us, he has friends in the department who would warn him." Emma stood up, pacing the small kitchen like a caged animal. "I called your friend Marcus this morning. He's driving up from Portland, should be here in 2 hours." "You called Marcus?" "I had to." "Because Tyler made another threat, one that changes everything." Emma turned to face him, and Christian saw absolute resolve in her expression. "He said if I ever tried to leave him again, if I ever embarrassed him publicly the way Rachel did, he wouldn't just kill me, he'd kill you too, and make it look like you'd attacked me and I defended myself." A tragic case of a disturbed hospital worker who became obsessed with a patient's wife. The sophistication of Tyler's planning was terrifying. He'd already established Christian as a potential threat by getting him suspended from the hospital. If Christian turned up dead under suspicious circumstances, the narrative would write itself. Unstable employee loses job, becomes fixated on wealthy man's wife, forces confrontation that ends in violence. But there's something Tyler doesn't know, Emma continued. Something I never told him because I was too ashamed, too scared of how he'd react. What? Emma reached into her duffel bag and pulled out a small recording device. I've been recording our conversations for months. Ever since the first time he hit me. I thought maybe if I could document the abuse, someone would eventually believe me. She pressed play, and Tyler's voice filled the kitchen, cold and calculating. You need to understand something, Emma. I don't make empty threats. Ask Rachel what happened when she tried to embarrass me by talking to that EMT at the hospital. Ask Jennifer what happened when she threatened to leave me for that hiking instructor she thought I didn't know about. Christian stared at the device in shock. He confessed to killing them both. There's more. Emma fast-forwarded through the recording. Tyler's voice continued. I've perfected the art of making problems disappear, darling. The key is patience, planning, and making sure everyone sees exactly what you want them to see. Poor Tyler, the grieving widower. Poor Tyler, whose wives keep having such unfortunate accidents. The recording was damning, but Christian knew it still might not be enough. Tyler could claim it was taken out of context, or that Emma had manipulated the audio. Rich men with good lawyers had beaten worse evidence than this. There's something else, Emma said. Tyler keeps souvenirs. Jewelry from his dead wives. Photos of them taken right before they died. Documents showing how he manipulated their insurance policies. He thinks I don't know about his safe, but I've seen him access it. I know the combination. Christian felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. Where is this safe? In his home office? Behind a painting of Eagles Point. How's that for twisted? Emma's smile was grim. The combination is Rachel's birthday. He's that arrogant, that confident he'll never be caught. The sound of Christian's phone buzzing interrupted them. The caller ID showed Sophie's school, and Christian's heart stopped. Hello? Mr. Matthews, this is Principal Morrison at Pine Grove Elementary. Sophie had a little accident on the playground during recess. She's okay, but we think she might have sprained her ankle. Can you come pick her up? Christian's blood ran cold. Sophie was careful, athletic, not prone to playground accidents. I'll be right there. Emma read his expression immediately. Tyler, she whispered, I have to get Sophie. I have to make sure she's safe. Christian grabbed his keys, his mind racing through possibilities. Come with me. We'll pick up Sophie, meet Marcus, and figure out how to end this. Christian, what if this is a trap? What if Tyler's people are waiting at the school? Then we spring it on our terms instead of his. Christian was already moving toward the door. Because I'm not going to let him hurt my daughter, and I'm not going to let him kill you. We're ending this today. Emma grabbed her duffel bag and followed him. As they left the apartment, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street, or the man behind the wheel speaking quietly into a phone. Tyler's surveillance network was more extensive than they'd imagined, and their every move was being reported back to him in real time. The drive to Sophie's school took 12 minutes that felt like hours. Christian's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white, while Emma sat in the passenger seat, checking and rechecking the recording device. Both of them knew they were walking into a situation that could explode in any direction. If something happens to me, Emma said as they pulled into the school parking lot, promise me you'll get this recording to the FBI, not the local police. Tyler's influence doesn't reach that far. Nothing's going to happen to you, Christian said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. They walked into Pine Grove Elementary together, two people bound by circumstances neither had chosen, both knowing that the next few hours would determine whether Emma lived to see another day or became the third Mrs. Blackstone to die in a tragic accident. Sophie was sitting in the nurse's office with an ice pack on her ankle, looking more embarrassed than hurt. When she saw Christian, her face lit up with relief. Daddy! I'm okay. I just felt funny when I was climbing the monkey bars. Christian hugged his daughter tightly, checking her over for any signs that her accident had been anything more than playground clumsiness. She seemed genuinely fine, chattering about how she'd tried to do the monkey bars backwards like her friend Jake, but her ankle had twisted when she lost her grip. Sophie, this is my friend Emma, Christian said carefully. She's going to stay with us for a little while. Sophie studied Emma with the frank curiosity of a 7-year-old. "You look sad. Are you okay?" Emma knelt down to Sophie's level, and for the first time since Christian had met her, she smiled genuinely. "I'm going through some tough times, sweetie. But your daddy is helping me, which makes me feel better." "My daddy helps lots of people," Sophie said proudly. "He used to save people when he was an EMT, and now he fixes things at the hospital so other people can save people." As they helped Sophie to Christian's truck, Emma whispered, "She's wonderful. Tyler can never be allowed to hurt her." Christian looked at his daughter, then at Emma, then at the recording device that might be their only chance of stopping a killer. The next phase of their plan would put all of them in danger, but staying passive meant certain death for Emma and possibly for him and Sophie as well. Marcus Webb was waiting in the parking lot of Riverside Community Center when they arrived, exactly where he'd said he'd be. Christian hadn't seen his former EMT partner in over a year, but Marcus looked exactly the same. Tall, lean, with the alert eyes of someone who'd seen too much violence and learned to stay ready for anything. "Christian," Marcus said, shaking his hand firmly, "Emma called me about your situation. We need to move fast." The reunion would have to wait. Tyler Blackstone had escalated the game, and now innocent lives were at stake. It was time to fight back. Marcus Webb listened to Emma's recordings, with the focused intensity of someone who'd spent years building cases against dangerous men. When the audio finished, he looked up with grim satisfaction. "This is enough to put Tyler away for life, but we need to get you somewhere safe first, Emma. He's planning to kill you this weekend." The plan Marcus outlined was risky but brilliant. While Tyler was at his Friday night poker game with city officials, Emma would return home and access his safe, copying every document and photographing every piece of evidence. Christian would create a distraction by filing a formal complaint against Tyler with the FBI's Portland office, giving Emma the window she needed. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable fog rolling in from the coast. Emma's hands trembled as she unlocked Tyler's home office, but her resolve held firm. The safe opened exactly as she'd predicted, revealing a horrifying collection of trophies: Jennifer's wedding ring, Rachel's necklace, detailed notes about their daily routines, and insurance documents showing Tyler as the beneficiary of policies worth millions. But the most damning evidence was a leather journal containing Tyler's meticulous planning for each murder. Pages detailing how he'd sabotaged Jennifer's hiking gear, how he'd drugged Rachel before pushing her down the stairs, and worst of all, his detailed plans for Emma's accidental fall at Eagles Point scheduled for Sunday morning. Christian waited in his truck outside Tyler's house, Sophie safe with Mrs. Chen for the night. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "FBI agents are standing by. Get Emma out now." Emma emerged from the house carrying a manila envelope stuffed with evidence, but as she reached Christian's truck, headlights swept across the driveway. Tyler's Mercedes was returning early from poker night. "Drive?" Emma whispered, diving into the passenger seat. Tyler spotted them immediately. His poker face disappeared, replaced by the cold fury of a predator whose prey had finally turned to fight. He gunned his engine, pursuing them through Riverside's winding streets, as Christian called Marcus on speakerphone. "We've got the evidence, but Tyler's chasing us," Christian reported, taking a sharp turn toward the highway. "Perfect," Marcus replied. "Lead him to Eagles Point. FBI agents are already positioned there. It's time to end this." The chase through the mountain roads was terrifying, Tyler's Mercedes closing the distance with each curve. But when they reached Eagles Point, the tables turned. FBI vehicles surrounded Tyler's car before he could reverse course. Agent Sarah Chen stepped forward with an arrest warrant as Tyler sat stunned behind his steering wheel. "Tyler Blackstone, you're under arrest for the murders of Jennifer Walsh and Rachel Blackstone, and for conspiracy to commit murder." The evidence Emma had stolen from the safe, combined with her recordings, painted an undeniable picture of Tyler's crimes. His journal contained enough detail to reopen both previous cases, and his plans for Emma's murder were laid out with chilling precision. 3 months later, Christian stood in a Portland courtroom as Tyler Blackstone was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The man who'd seemed untouchable had been brought down by the courage of a terrified bride and a single father who'd refused to look the other way. Emma had started a new life in Seattle, working with a domestic violence organization to help other women escape dangerous situations. She visited Riverside occasionally, always stopping by to see Christian and Sophie, who'd become like family to her. Christian returned to his job at the hospital after the investigation cleared him completely. Dr. Harrison personally apologized and offered him a promotion to facility supervisor. But more importantly, Sophie was safe, and she'd learned an important lesson about standing up for people who needed help. On quiet evenings, Christian would sometimes think about that wedding day when he'd first seen Emma's terrified face. He'd made a choice to get involved, to risk everything for a stranger, and that choice had saved her life. Tyler's pattern of killing wives had been broken forever, and 3 women who might have become his future victims would never know how close they'd come to danger. The case made national news, highlighting the sophisticated methods wealthy abusers use to escape justice. Emma's courage in gathering evidence inspired new legislation requiring better training for law enforcement in domestic violence cases involving influential perpetrators. Sometimes the right choice is also the dangerous choice. Sometimes helping a stranger means risking everything you've built. But as Christian tucked Sophie into bed each night, watching her sleep peacefully in their small apartment, he knew he'd make the same decision again. Because some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible to win. Tyler Blackstone's reign of terror was over. Ended not by wealth or influence, but by ordinary people who chose to be brave when it mattered most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.